All right. So I am Roy Furr. This is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. And as you can see, if you're watching, I am here with Kim Krause Schwalm, A-List Copywriter. And we're just going to dive right in with the first question.
Get my shirt
when
on there.
Copy Insiders,
Okay.
yes. When I reached out to you, you said, Roy, I would love to do an interview with you. It's been a while, but it's going to be a few weeks because, well, I'm not around. So you and your husband just got back from what sounds like an incredible trip. Something that made me think of lifestyles of the rich and famous. Wow, that's a terrible Australian accent, but lifestyles of the rich and famous, or lifestyles of an A-list copywriter. So Kim, could we just start? Like, could you share about that trip? And importantly, like, how did copywriting make it possible?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, we had a 3-week vacation. Actually, we also had a 2-week vacation back in late June, July. And we also had a 1-week vacation in May. I mean, so it's probably adding up already to 6 weeks that I've taken off this year. And I actually had a similar year in 2019, which was sort of a big year for us because it was the 25th anniversary. So we had all these other great trips. But, when you are your own boss, you're in charge. The one thing you have to remember is, and I remember getting this advice many years ago from a family friend who was a stockbroker. He said the biggest expense you have with a vacation is the cost of your time off away from your business.
Yes.
And when I do take time off, 99% completely not checking into work. I mean, I might check email, might respond to a few quick things. Once in a while, I'll send a quick email or something out to my list, but almost always there's zero work. It's a complete unplug. And so, yeah, I have to plan well in advance. I have to get my things done. But, over the years, I have mostly pursued, I don't just write for, a fee. There's usually some kind of royalty or other ongoing incentive involved. So I literally have like at least, even though I'm really not even doing much client work at all these days, I have like 9 controls, all paying me royalties. Some I wrote last even touched or edited a word on like back in 2011, and they're still paying me royalties. So I come home and there's royalties in my bank account. There's, income from the courses that I've launched or promoted and queued up in advance. So yeah, that's how I'm able to do it.
These are the proven direct response marketing, copywriting, and entrepreneurship success strategies you can use today to write your own ticket and create the life you want. I am Roy Furr, and this is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Now, here's today's breakthrough.
And just having that freedom to be able to do that is what a lot of us, why we got into copywriting. I mean, initially it was for a lot of other reasons besides being able to travel. But now that we're empty nesters, we can do this. My husband's retired, and so
yeah, absolutely. So freedom looks very different at different stages.
At different stages. I mean, for me, a big freedom thing, I know we'll probably talk about this later, kind of like my why and why did I get into this? I had my first child. I went back to work. I was completely mommy tracked after like a completely stellar career. I was making $100K a year base, like back in 1998. It was a high paying job, but I was like, miserable and this is terrible. And it wasn't so much that, oh, I miss my child. I mean, obviously I missed my child, but it was just to feel like, I'm going to just work 50 hours a week and barely see my kid. And for what? Right. So that's when I finally took the leap to freelancing. And I got to the point within a few years, mostly thanks to royalties and climbing the copywriting ladder, that I was working 20, 25 hours a week and making at least 3 or 4 times as much. So that was sort of my why then. I want to be the one that take my kids to school and pick them up and then no work after that.
Yeah, my freelance lifestyle, like I still have kids at home. I'm not an empty nester yet, but one of the things that I decided with my wife early on as I was transitioning to freelance was that was part of the freedom that I was doing this for. And so 3 days a week, I drop the kids off at school. 2 days a week, I pick them up. And that's what we get to choose, right?
It's a lovely way to balance things. I mean, it's such a overused word, and especially for most women, but also men, it's like this impossible dream of balance. But I literally felt like I found balance. Like, wait a minute. I mean, I can have a happy, exciting, interesting, very well paying job. And I don't have to like be this corporate wage slave, and working 50 hours a week and wondering when I can take my child to a doctor's appointment if I get permission from a freaking boss, you know.
Awesome. Well, let's do the formal introduction, and I
Okay.
have a lot more questions here. So, Kim Krause Schwalm, A-List Copywriter. She's the founder of Get Dangerously Good Copywriting Training and of the
Mentoring.
Get Dangerously Good Copywriting Training and Mentorship Hub. She helps copywriters, marketers, and business owners become dangerously good at their craft and master the techniques, client management skills, and CEO mindset that will make them A-list exceptional in their industry.
I like long sentences.
Yes. We can do a run-on
to edit that down.
Over the past 2 decades, Kim has built a reputation as one of the top direct response writers in the country. That's how I discovered her. She's racked up dozens of successful direct mail and online controls, beating legendary copywriters and becoming the first female copywriter to get a boardroom control. Her copy has graced the pages of companies all over the globe, like Soundview, Bottom Line, National Geographic, Green Valley Natural Solutions. She's spoken on stage at top-tier conferences like Copy Chief Fly, the
Copy Accelerator we just mentioned.
Yep, Copy Accelerator. Kim also helped build the Healthy Direction supplement business to today's equivalent of more than $40 million in sales in the first 3 years.
Yep.
And as a freelancer, her copy has generated more than $700 million in revenue for her clients. We will talk about where to get more from Kim at the end of this, but she does have a website at kimschwalm.com. And there is some excellent giveaways and bonuses that she's offering for my listeners and viewers at the end of this. So Kim, let's start here. In your bio, you talked about becoming A-list exceptional. What does it mean to be A-list exceptional?
I think when you've competed at the highest levels of copywriting, and while there are definitely levels like that now, when you go back, and it makes me sound old, but you go back 15 years or 20 years when everybody had to live and die by the strength of their direct mail promos.
Yeah.
And direct mail is a much bigger commitment financially than slapping something up on a online page, right? I mean, anybody can do that. I can do that. I have lead pages. I can slap stuff up there, right? My stuff's pretty good, but yeah, you can slap anything up there, right? But back in the day, it was like at least 50 cents just to put the postage on and print the darn thing, and then, whatever. So my point is, it was the main driver for many businesses. They lived or died by the strength of their direct mail campaigns. They were willing to pay good money. They invested heavily. It was a huge cost. And you had to go up against some of the best, most legendary copywriters if you wanted to, have a control. I mean, I went up against Jim Rutz, and first time I bombed. And luckily the client came back 6 months later and said, we're going to hire you over again to write another package. And on that second try, boom, I beat Jim Rutz. So, I went on to then beat a control that Paris Rampopoulos had written for Boardroom, which, allowed me to become the first female copywriter. And these were all at the time very legendary, hard to even break into companies. So, all of that is completely applicable to the type of copy that we use online. And so, yeah, I think there's sort of this almost PhD education and just the level of quality required. I mean, there was so much scrutiny over every single word on anything that you put out there,
For context, like there is almost no cost to start sending traffic to, let's say, a ClickFunnels funnel or whatever, right? There's almost no cost to putting up a web page with an offer. No incremental cost to doing that. But in direct mail, oftentimes these companies were spending $25,000 per copywriter just for the fees and hiring 2 or more copywriters. So let's just say $40,000. And that's before they spent a cent on media. And to get any decent volume to make a predictive guess about which piece is
you'd
going
have to mail at least
to
20 to 30,000 pieces in each test,
at
slot.
$1 per piece mailed.
Yep.
So
including
we're
the
talking
list rental and everything else. Yep.
Easily $100,000 just to run a test.
Yep.
And so that requires it requires a different entry level. Looks very different
Well, it's not just the entry level. Like I said, it was just the amount of scrutiny and the number of drafts. I mean, and just getting it, it had to be perfect, as perfect as possible. And they already knew some of these were going to just bomb. I mean, I saw what always made me feel better when I had my bombs, and we all have them. I mean, no matter how high up
Yeah.
we get, is I would even see that, there'd be big name copywriters and this is one of the benefits of being on the inside of a major direct marketing company and on the marketing side, which is what I was. You can see that they would have things that bombed or didn't work. And sometimes it was the product. Sometimes it's just they took too big a risk. Nobody could 100% predict what was going to work or not. But it's like, that's how you get the winners. You test, you fail, you test, you fail, and boom, you get a huge winner. So there was that understanding that it was a lot of, you controlled everything that you could control as much as you could, but there was a lot of unknowns.
Yes, absolutely. And the result is, go through that a few times and you become a dangerously good copywriter. And we should put like a trademark on that for you. So what do you think are the most important traits or guiding principles for someone to become like a dangerously good copywriter? What does it really take? I mean, today it's easy to get copy online, but to become dangerously good,
Well,
what's that?
honestly, there's a number of things that come to mind. One of the first things that came to mind, ironically, is humility. I see a lot of people out there, or I hear a lot of, you see them in the Facebook groups or whatever, and they think they're just hot, what, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as you start to feel like that, like you're just going to get knocked down. Like that's just one of my experience from business and copywriting and life in general, right? And so you have to have, I mean, even the top copywriters I've worked with or know as friends, they're the ones sitting in a conference listening to a copywriter who's like maybe 20 years younger, and they're writing down notes and they're constantly learning. And you never feel that you know everything, and you're always curious. And so you go in like, with a client, you want to dig everything out you can. I mean, research is definitely a huge secret weapon that I have and many other top copywriters. But I think that, don't get too big for your britches, basically. I guess that's an old
Yeah.
phrase.
Well, so this is interesting. I know that there are a ton of copywriters, like, I mean, thinking Eugene Schwartz, I could go back to Robert Collier, a lot of more recent copywriters that have
Mhm.
had some level of interest in like various meditation, mindfulness traditions. And there's the whole like learning to keep your ego in check or kill your ego, or the way that I like to think of it is a strong enough ego that you are not, you're not like a strong enough sense of self that you're not uh, caught up in that people have to see me in a certain way, right? So
Right.
do you have any kind of like background or interest that's like pulled you into this realization that like, oh, you have to be humble, like you have to like
I
not get your ego caught
mean,
up in this?
I would just say it's more kind of in my I mean, I was like a very young manager. We mentioned
Okay.
in my bio that I helped launch this highly successful supplement division. And I was like basically running it at one point with about, I don't know, 10 or 12 employees.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought I was a little bit of hot, what, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of got knocked down. I remember we had like this 360-degree feedback, Jerry Bell, and I was like reading these verbatim. I'm like, no, so I think that kind of made me much more self-aware. It's like, oh, but like another great example of the humility, why you need to be humble is, let's say somebody hires me or hires you and we go in and yeah, they're hiring us because we have a great reputation and track record. But are you just going to go in there and act like you're a freaking know-it-all and tell them my idea is the best and we're going to do this way? No, you're going to be collaborative. When they
Yeah.
when they give you back your draft, you're going to accept their feedback. I mean, obviously, if there's things that you disagree, you're going to challenge or say, did you think of this? Or here's why I did it this way. But you're going to be receptive and open to feedback because many of my most successful controls, they're not like 100% just me. It's like that whole collaboration with the client and being able to listen and work and work with them and accept feedback. So that's another reason where the humility, comes into play.
Yeah, I love also when you're dealing with a marketing manager who's like this, and I'm thinking specifically about Cindy Butehorn, who you
Right.
worked with Cindy
Oh yeah,
and
I know
Nancy
her well.
Kathy at, inside the Phillips umbrella,
Yeah.
and and Cindy is always great about like, here's my feedback. And she's always, she'll tell it like she sees it, right?
Right.
But she also, um, there's this give and take of, if you have an idea you want to fight for, like, be humble as the copywriter,
Yeah.
but also fight for your ideas. So it is this collaborative process where you, especially as you start to develop a reputation, you can push a little bit back, and you may suggest, hey, could we test a couple things or whatever.
Exactly. And that's usually the best compromise, obviously, too.
Yeah.
Is let's test a few things. I mean, if you get too much into a client pleasing or people pleasing thing, you're kind of doing them a disservice. So there is, you want to be humble, but you also, like you said, you're going to stand up and say, here are my ideas. Here's why I'm doing this way. Here's what I believe will work, based on my research or analysis or whatever it is. But sometimes we used to joke. I mean, sometimes if a client loved your copy too much, we'd be like, oh crap,
oh no,
it's gonna bomb,
that's the bomb. Yeah.
It's never gonna, that's not gonna work. Like I remember having Marty Edelston once love this promo I wrote for Bottom Line Personal, and I was like, oh crap, and sure enough, it didn't beat the control. But then I had like the one that beat Jim Rutz for a financial newsletter. I remember the editor. He told me after the fact, after one that, beat the control, it became the new control. He was like, yeah, I really don't like that package. Okay. I don't really care. Just keep paying me the royalties and sorry, you don't like it. That's usually a good sign.
Yeah. So let's dig into like the whole copywriting process, copywriting thing, like the actual projects and what they look like. And so I kind of want to start just for reference. So you came up in direct mail, but today, I don't know what percentage of your stuff is more direct mail, what percentage is online first. So could you just describe the type of promos that you write? What are the actual deliverables on a lot of your copywriting projects? Just so we can start with a sense of that.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm really not doing a lot of active copywriting these days because I am kind of moving more towards this little semi-retirement. And I have another whole new interest, which we can get into in a little bit, that's sort of related to copywriting. And then, of course, I have my mentoring program. I have my trainings. But most of what I'm hired to do is strictly online. Long form sales pages. But the funny thing is, I mean, like I mentioned, I have all these controls. Some are like back to 2011. I've, for example, for SoundView / Advanced Bio Nutritionals, which is their supplement division, I have multiple promos I wrote originally for direct mail magalogs that word for word have been just used, repurposed as an online sales page. I even have one that's been running for a few years now for Circo 2, a nitric oxide boosting supplement that word for word was made into a produced VSL. It's just literally the running copy is the video script. So, so a lot of this stuff is, even the direct mail stuff is used online. Like the direct mail promo for a digestive supplement that I wrote 11 years ago still mails every once in a while, but they use it as an online sales page too. So yeah, it's a important lesson I want to add here, that a good friend of mine learned the hard way, like 10 years ago, at least. It was whenever we started transitioning from like strictly direct mail to starting to do online. And she had written a financial promo for a very big name company. I won't say who. And she had written one of the most successful option trading, like newsletter promos that they'd had. And it was direct mail. She was getting all these great royalties, but she did not put in there what her royalties would be if it was used online in her agreement. And then they transitioned it over and they were using it as a highly successful sales page, and they would not pay her a penny in royalties for that. So immediately, every single contract I ever started sending out for anybody, it's like, if they're hiring you for online, always put in there what the deal is if they convert it to a direct mail promo, and vice versa. Direct mail, always put in there. And if it's used online, this is what you owe me. Well, we're never going to use it that way. I'm just going in the contract. I don't care.
That's a nice little tip, I think.
That is a tip that could literally save somebody tens of thousands of dollars. So there you go. Yeah. You got your value, but keep listening.
There you go. So if I do want to keep like going, like hashing through this copywriting process, because I mean, one of the huge values that you have versus a lot of people who came up as online copywriters is you have had to go against controls. Like so many times with
Yeah.
online copy, it seems like, oh, we're just looking for a new thing, right? And maybe there's kind of a control or something that worked before, but it's not the same kind of like, Kim, you're going up against Jim Rutz, who
Right.
is this incredible
Who
copywriter.
is no longer
And
with us, so we don't have to worry about it. But yeah.
and you have to beat the Jim Rutz controller.
Right.
You have to beat the
Right.
Paris Limpropolis. So for most people, that's just a terrifying idea. What is your process? Number one, so you're not completely terrified, but also number two, so you're more likely to come out the winner in the end of that.
Again, I mentioned it earlier, research is huge. There are so many copywriters who just give it short shrift, and then you see their copy and you can see that it kind of sounds like everything else out there. It's very shallow. It doesn't get into, I mean, you don't want to write a scientific paper. And I do write a lot of stuff,
Yeah,
obviously, in the supplement industry, but you have to be able to find that amazing claim that you can legally say, right,
yeah,
about your product. You've got to do some digging. And and sometimes you need a different claim than everybody else is putting out there, right? Maybe about a particular hot nutrient. So or maybe you have a control that's starting to fatigue a little and you want to take advantage of, hey, there's a new angle here, support do I have for that? And like one example is a couple years ago when COVID was really, becoming this huge thing and everybody was concerned about immunity. I had this long running control for Circo 2, which I actually still do, and decided we wanted to try an immunity angle. So I start digging in to my research and pulling up study. And then I found out the study, it was a long process, but I finally was able to interpret it as, it would kill 100 times more viruses. And I couldn't say virus, but, basically on the spot, right? If you
okay,
took this nitric oxide thing, I was like, suddenly I had this big new claim. We put that we didn't even change the sales page. We just put it in an email. It increased revenue by like, I forget, like 20 some percent. Like it was like literally, I made like $50,000 more in royalties over the next 6 months because all I did was write a new email, but I dug out a new angle with this really unassailable, exciting claim and proof. Right.
I love that.
So that
Yeah,
is like
it's
a really dramatic, not, it doesn't always result in that, but that is the kind of edge that doing the research, and it's not just studies, it's interviewing your client, it's interviewing whoever let's say you're selling a guru and their advice, whether they're a doctor or a financial person. It's like if it's a newsletter, you're going through everything they've written, in the last couple of years. You become like this expert. You've just soaked it up. You've gone through, you've talked to customers, you've, looked at, your prototypes out on forums, etc. And you know what I mean? Like that
yeah.
gives you the confidence and the knowledge and that power, than someone who's just freaking dialing it in, which again, if you're going up against the other A-listers, they're doing the same kind of thing. But, not
That's one of
that
the
hard
things.
to have a huge advantage now because there's a lot of people who just don't really put the work in, you know?
Yeah. I'm working with a newer copywriter and I don't want to be too hard on him. And I'm not saying anything I didn't already say to him directly, but he was in a situation where he didn't have the research yet, but he was trying to write beyond the lead. Like we had some teases of the research and the lead, but he was trying to write beyond the lead. And because he hadn't done that research, it was just repetition of promises and like making it fluffier,
Uh-huh.
right? And so he agreed. Like he got to a point in the writing process and in writing the pitch part of the promo where he was just like, it's not working. Like I don't know what to say here. And oftentimes that is the thing. Like if you don't know what to say, it's because you don't have anything worth talking about yet.
Right.
And the answer to that is research, right?
Right. Right.
So how do you like? So you talked a lot, and I mean I'm a student of all the great copywriters who emphasize proof. So I'm all about proof and credibility and all those elements. One thing that I've noticed a lot more recently is a lot of research into like a prototypical customer story, at avatar type story or a real customer story. So how do those play into your copywriting process too? Like, I mean, are you digging out a lot of stories too, in addition to like, that one line, that one claim out of a study?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, we're definitely wired for stories as humans. A story lead is just one of like six leads that I typically are my go-to types of leads. So it's not like every single promo I write has the, oh, they brought him in an ambulance and, his
Yeah.
last breath, or, it's like, and this gets
Yeah.
kind of cliche after a while. Um, but I like to use them sometimes. My approach is not to let it go on too long, because we are, as human beings, we are basically self-centered creatures. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, it interests me at first, but kind of what's in it for me? Like, don't wait too long to bring them into the story, to bring them into that you're talking to them. In one person, is a one-to-one communication. I didn't turn in to watch some TV show. Like, this is, it's got to hold my attention. It's got to speak to me. So
Yes.
I have used stories. I've had to, because of the kind of clients I work with, make sure they're real stories. I've had
Yes.
to, I can't just make crap up, and but yeah, they've been very effective. And again, sometimes you have to find them through your research. Like I did recently for something that's like heart related. I found a comment on an article in like the Harvard Heart Letter, and it was like
Okay.
online, and I was able to just kind of go with that story and
Yeah.
use that as a you know what I mean? And another one I found in a book online, and it was for a brain, memory type supplement. And it was a very dramatic story. But I was, because of the treatment was addressing this chemical in her brain that the supplement also did. Like, that was my connection to the supplement. Because that's the other big part, is how do I connect this now to my product?
Yeah.
The story I found out in the wild, like I did one for an anti-aging supplement, and it was the twin astronauts, right? It was like, okay, so how do the Mark Kelly and his brother, and the one guy came back from space and he had aged so much more, and what happened, and how do I tie that back? And, I had to really dig, but I was like, oh, wait, it's because of the, whatever, the SIRT2, whatever hormone, and that's what this supplement addresses. So, you got to be able to tie it back to your product, these stories. If they just like
In
way out of left field, it's kind of like, oh, you just told me this story, and now it has nothing to do with things.
Yeah, one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten for this, because I mean, you and I, like, I've written way more financial stuff, and I believe you've written more health than financial.
Yeah.
One of the things is yeah, as the copywriters, we need to basically be able to justify everything in court. Hopefully, we never have to,
you
right?
know,
Um,
20 some years, I still haven't had to go to court. I've only had one thing ever be questioned. It was only because they were doing this thing on the phone that had nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
but then like, oh, what's with this copy? Oh crap.
but a good piece of copy that's when it's submitted to the client for various reviews, including legal and compliance review, is going to have citations of all the
Right.
claims made and all of that. So let's talk about big ideas for a second here. How do you know? So you're doing all this research. You're all the thoughts are swirling in your head, right? You've taken 100 pages of notes, you've clipped a whole bunch of articles, et cetera. How do you know when you've found your winning big idea?
So, I mean, it's a lot of different like litmus tests. I mean, the first one is, does that make me stop and go, what? Or huh? Or really? Or, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Does it stop me in my tracks in some way?
Okay.
Like, oh,
Yes.
that's different. Or wow, really? Um, so, and then it's like, can I, provide enough backup or proof? Can I link it to my product? I mean, those are all kind of the litmus tests, but the first thing is, what I just said, like, does it stop me in my tracks? Does it really stand out?
Okay. So you're looking for that almost gut level reaction. I
Yeah,
know Marty Edelston had his, does this make me vibrate?
right.
And that can
Exactly.
apply to ideas or copy. I got to interview Bill Bonner once, and he talked about putting on his prospect hat and just looking for the story that was most compelling to him
Yeah.
as the prospect. But it's still like that same thing. It's the, what causes you to rubberneck, like Elvis.
Yeah. Does it just make you want to hear more? Like, I mean, one of my favorite promos is my good friend Dan Ferrari's anti-aging supplement for Genesis, which is, we share client with, Green Valley. I've written a lot of different controls for them over the years. But this one, I remember first seeing it, and I loved how, and I actually had him on one of my mentoring group calls. And, we interviewed him like, how did you come up with this big idea? And one of the things that he always does is he likes to read a lot of like tangential books, like not necessarily totally related to what he's writing about, but something kind of out there. And he was reading a book about how a lot of Silicon Valley executives were spending all this money researching and using like these high priced anti-aging therapies. And he came up with a way to link that back to one of the ingredients in the supplement. But it's like it starts out with the mansion on the hill, and like they're having this elite party with Hollywood stars and the Silicon Valley executives, and they're all there to hear this scientist talk about this $10,000 treatment and all this. But you don't have to pay $10,000. You can get access to this now, right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
like that exclusivity, and you're being able to bypass that and get access. So I just loved, like, that's just such a great, like, almost escapist thing, but it's like it ties right in directly with that fantasy of, hey, I can have the same thing that these people are using. They have that unfair advantage that they're having. Like, we've used that unfair advantage thing in financial, we use it with health, you know. But yeah, I mean, that's just one example, but he just literally got the idea from reading a totally unrelated book.
Yeah. So how much like as part of your process do you pay attention to, and I guess for me it's kind of become unconscious, but it's not intentional,
You
but
mean
the
subconscious, or I guess
yeah, like
unconscious?
well subconscious and unintentional,
Yeah, yeah.
but what I'm asking is like how much do you pay attention to, like, oh, what news article, when you're scrolling through whatever news, do you click on, or
Oh yeah,
whatever,
I
how much?
collect them all the time. I mean, especially when I was more actively writing stuff. Like, I mean, like I, on two different occasions for a couple years at a time anyway, I had like a detox supplement control. And I mean, I still collect articles, even though I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll reach out and say, hey, can I write a new lead for my former control? Because like if there's something interesting and new about yet another toxin related to some health thing, for example, that could be like a whole other angle that could be used, for that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
actively collect like idea files and, for various controls. And when I come across something like that, for sure,
Yes.
I'll save
Excellent.
it, I'll share it with a client.
Yeah, and that can even be a great way to get. I did this with one client in particular. I just sent him a news article and I said, "Hey, this would be really interesting to write a promo around."
Yeah.
And boom, there was the project, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, you can do that. I mean, it's easier, obviously, for somebody you already have a relationship with, but it
yeah.
could be the way in the door where you can say, let
So
me do this. Yeah.
you've talked about mentors a lot, and I want to kind of transition towards some of this, like, more business and
Sure.
career related. What role have mentors played in your copywriting career? And then, like, as an add-on to that, what opportunities are there today to get mentors? And what do you, if a new copywriter was saying, okay, I want a mentor, what should they look for as they're pursuing the opportunities?
Right. I mean, to me, like the natural evolution of like a mentor is maybe someone that you work with, or personally, and they kind of take you a little bit under their wing. But you might get like a little bit of their time here and there, right? Like it could be the occasional lunch, or like I think of when I was in my corporate career, some of the women that mentored me as an up and coming marketing person, right? We'd
Yeah.
have the lunches and the this um, and then, I think about, like, for example, Carlene Anglais Cole, my good friend, and Clayton, the late Clayton Makepeace, they already had a very established relationship. So when she decided to go freelance, he very much acted as kind of this bridge and mentor to help her along. So I personally didn't really have that when it came to copywriting. I mean, it wasn't like a person that said, oh, we're going to teach you everything I know. And like, you know, um,
Yeah.
but there were people who were generous. I would get to know some people at conferences. Don Houtman, I don't know if you remember him. He wrote,
Yes.
what is it, Speak Spanish Like a Diplomat, very famous
That
ad.
was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And he used to write some copy for Phillips. And I remember meeting him at this newsletter conference that used to happen all the time in DC. And like he would review my copy from time to time. Even David Deutsch like reviewed my copy a few times. And I'd always send like some giant fruit basket or something to thank them. But there weren't like paid mentorship programs or things like that. So and there's a lot of different types of mentoring out there. I mean, some of it's just really 150 people listening into a call. And then there's like a much more personal thing. So yeah, I mean, I offer a small group mentoring that just kind of goes for 6 months. But as I always tell people at the end, like I will always be your mentor. And I do. Like they still reach out and this and that. But it's I have to charge for it because it's a very concentrated amount of my time, focused amount of time
Amen
over a
to
short
that.
period. And I'm literally taking myself off the market, off projects so that I can do this. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the classic mentoring is more that kind of, a colleague or friend or someone who's further along than you. And if you can find somebody like that in your life, I mean, that is extraordinary. Like it can be, a
Well,
wonderful thing.
it sounds like your path was kind of like mine, where for a long time I didn't have any kind of formal mentor, either somebody that I lucked into or um, somebody that I paid for it. But what I did consistently have was like I went to clients who I really respected what they knew about marketing.
Hmm.
And so while while many of my mentorships were shorter lived and could have lasted for as long as a copy review, I still consider them a mentorship moment.
Yeah.
And so like working with, and I can think back before I got into direct response, and there's good people there, but like a couple copy reviews from Mark Ford just completely changed the way that I wrote copy,
Exactly. Yeah.
you
So I
know?
think that's another great point. I mean, I didn't have a formal mentor, but I got a chance to work with some really, really bright people,
Yeah.
fairly early on in my career. And, like working with Boardroom the first few times, I worked with Michelle Walk and Carmen Suarez, the creative team were just brilliant. All the promos that I've written over the years for like Soundview, Advanced Bio Nutritionals, every copywriter, it's not just Paris's Cubs, every copywriter works with Paris as their copy chief. I've learned so much from him, and having him critique my copy.
Yeah.
I got a chance to do a project like directly with Clayton Makepeace at one point,
Yeah.
fairly early in my career. And again, just the one or two times that we went through drafts and he looked at my copy. I mean, I still always write every stat like 1 in 3. I remember him specifically telling me, all these specific things sometimes that we all have, like I like it this way or that way. But it's like 1-in-3. He like, always do it that way. Okay, Clayton. So like literally every time I write something like that, it's like, Clayton, I'm doing it that way. And I tell all my people now they have to do it that way. That's just like a
That's
little
funny.
thing, obviously there's a
Yeah.
few good
Yeah.
things that I learned.
So, just a couple more important questions that I want to make sure that that I get to.
Sure.
So, you've been talking about how many great clients you've worked with, and probably a few bad ones. uh,
Really bad. They're
there's a
so
couple
bad. I
out
could
there.
write a book about the book of bad clients.
So aside from clients who only want to pay you for one media when they use your copy, are there
Oh.
any other client red flags to watch out for? Without we don't have to name names, but just general ideas for how we can avoid getting ourselves into a bad client situation.
Well, so one thing that keeps happening, and again, I keep in touch with all my mentees. I've mentored like by now it's almost like 50 people have gone through my different
Oh
mentoring
wow.
programs, and I keep in touch with, pretty much everybody. But one trend seems to be, the company, and sometimes they think they're kind of hot or whatever. And they're like, oh, we want to see if you'll write this copy as a test, right? And if we use it, we'll pay you for it. Or and I'm not talking about maybe when someone actually wants to offer you a job with salary and benefits. And I can understand in those circumstances, maybe there's some copy tests that you're going to do. And ideally, they're
Yeah.
going to pay you for your time to do it, that kind of thing. But just the idea that you're just going to go around to experienced copywriters and ask them to do stuff on spec for the opportunity to get their foot in the door with you. That kind of stuff is like, and it's funny because
Yeah.
I was on vacation in Italy for 3 weeks, and my one of my mentees, had this kind of come up, and she's like, I don't know what to do, and I'm like, basically like, here's what I get. charge me this much up, I'm going to charge you this much up front. And then there's the performance bonus, et cetera. But, she kept it very reasonable and went back to them. They're like, nah, we're not able to do that. So she's like, okay, fine. I don't think it's going to work out. And then literally the next day she got some great opportunity that came aboard, around that she was able to say yes to. So that's the other thing we'd always forget is like, say no to things because it leaves you open for that next good thing. But that's just one example. Absolutely. I mean, I think when they're just too worried about pricing, to me, it's like, okay, you don't value what copywriters do, or you're going to be one of these anxious clients, like you know what I mean? You're going to make me go through 10 rounds because, you're going to be so nervous about what you're investing. I had one person, this was about 5 or 6 years ago, hired me, and he was like a doctor who had his own supplement. And he was referred to me by somebody else. So I thought, okay, I'll give him a shot. I got my 50% advance. It was like, I don't know, 10K, whatever. And he was booked like 3 months or 4 months out. And then I could just tell from some of the know back and forth, like this was a big amount of money for him. Right. And he was anxious. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not feeling too good about this. And then one of my other past clients called me like, do you have something available for January? And I was kind of like, so I reached out to the other guy and I'm like, if you don't want to pursue this, I'll actually give you back your $10,000 deposit and we can, and he was almost like relieved and I was relieved and I wanted to just work with my own quantity. But, like I just got the heebie-jeebies, right? I had another client that I actually did work with where I ignored those heebie-jeebies. And it was the same kind of thing where he was just like, over editing my copy. And I'm like, no,
Yeah. Our gut feelings can really tell us a lot, and it can take experience to learn to listen to them. And we're not always great about it. Huh?
Oh yeah. But I went for years and years with like no contract. I would just have sort of like a little invoice / contract. It would just have the royalty amount and I'd have them sign it, and there were some payment terms, but now it's like, I've got a very incredible 2-page contract that covers everything. And kill fees need to be discussed while you're still in love. It's almost like a prenup, right?
Yeah.
And I've only had less than a handful of times, over the years of ones had to be applied, but it's like, that's not the kind of stuff you negotiate, when you're like
in the middle of
divorce, right?
Yeah. So one last important question around contracts and agreements and stuff. And this has been really important, and it even ties all the way back to the very first question. So you typically don't just get paid a fee, meaning like hours for dollars or copy for
training
dollars
for hours. Yes.
Yeah. Because even if you're getting paid a fee for writing a chunk of copy, that is another form of trading dollars for hours. It is. Get it done quicker.
Or, someone wants to send me out to do a training for a day or this or that. Yeah. Like it's all just basically dollars for hours. I mean, you can get to the point where you're charging a lot of dollars for those hours and maybe it's worthwhile, but.
So you also get paid on performance. So do you have, for copywriters who are listening to this, who say, I want to take a trip to Italy and Europe and show up at
spritzes home and have money going in my bank account. I know it sounds like and you can make money on the beach. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Can you write a letter like this one, Kim?
Exactly.
So do you have tips on royalties and performance compensation, including like how have you found it's worked best to sell the idea to clients and how to structure it? Any tips around that?
Well, I mean, you have to present it as a win-win. I mean, the most smart direct marketers totally get it. I mean, Phillips Publishing. The bigger the royalty check they were writing to like a Jim Rutz or a Gary Bencivenga, the happier they were because they knew they were making a ton of more money, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, we want to pay you lots of royalties because it means we're making even more. So, it's, a lot of clients kind of have this scarcity mindset and they go, well, if I'm giving you all this money, just a little side story I have to tell, Rodale Press was like this hugely successful, one of the biggest direct response companies. And there are probably a lot of reasons why they're now like a tiny shadow of their former self, if they even exist anymore. But at one point they used to work with the Gary Bencivengas and the Jim Punkrys and et cetera,
right?
And you make, pay tons of royalties. And then they hired this executive who used to be with Disney. And he's like, why are these copywriters making all this money? We can't be paying them $1 million or this or that. And then they started just hiring people with flat fee deals. And I was kind of starting out. So I did one of these flat fee deals and I was like, it was a lot of work. But my point is, they just like 5 years later, they were basically a non-entity, you know what I mean? In direct marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, who was going to go right for them if it's just a flat fee? So I guess my point is, there's a lot of ignorance out there. And so you're right. You have to sell the client on it, on what's in it for them, right? Just like if you're writing copy. And so, what's in it for them? Number one, I become a partner with you in the success, right? I'm invested in the success as much as you are. Maybe even more, because I want that vacation in Italy. No. And, I really like Aperol spritzes. And so I'm going to be, a vested partner. Two, you only pay me based on if you're making money, right? Because if this thing's a bomb, obviously you just owe me the fee and we're done, right? Oh, but although actually I'll probably want to come back and do another test. I probably won't even charge you. You know what I mean? Like, let's test a different headline, let's different angle, because I really am going to be incentivized to get that control. And then when we do get that control and you start running it and it inevitably starts to fatigue, or there's another new angle that comes along, like, hey, there's this new thing with toxins that we should write about. And then I come to you and I'm like, let me write a new lead and a new headline and a new email, and boom, now you're getting 25% more sales, right? So it's like, this is the beautiful stuff that can happen when you have a copywriter who is getting royalties, because they're now a partner. You don't have to go to some other, I need to find somebody to write a new headline test. Oh, I can't do it for 6 months. It's like, it's going to cost $1,000. Like, just call me. I'll do it. Like, cause I'm getting royalties. Right. So anyway, I could just go on, but these are all the reasons why, if you open your eyes and you work with and then the more they get to know your business, like the better, they're able to come up with other things. You can hire them to write other stuff. And it's like, I mean, you're missing out. Like, if you just want to keep going through the treadmill of mediocre copywriters that you can get for cheap, and you think it's like penny wise and pound foolish,
Yes.
So anyway, I feel a little passionate about this, but I feel like there's a lot of companies that are missing out on what royalties can do.
You're preaching to the choir here. I think that you attract really good copywriters when you're willing to pay royalties, because
or even
good copywriters think about this,
right? That are going to be really incentivized and be your partner. And they're not going to, if I was getting like $200 every quarter, I'm not going to be like, every time, when you call me up, like, I need another headline, I'm not going to like drop everything. But if you're paying me like 20 grand or something, I'll be like, oh, let me make sure I get this done like tomorrow. Or something, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Anyway.
So obviously you have a ton to share. Your emails are some of the best in the industry for people who are, I'm speaking the truth.
I mean, it means a lot. Thank you.
So I want to point people towards where they can get more from you. And there's a couple different levels. I think everybody should go to, and these links are going to be in the description in this order for anybody watching or listening. Number one, you can go to copyinsiders.com to sign up for Kim's emails. And it's not just signing up for the emails. She has a free welcome gift that is the ultimate A-List Copywriters promo checklist.
And it's actually 5 checklists in one, including 2 for research.
Excellent. So it's such a I love those checklists, because it feels like a more useful resource to just be able to like point you in all the right directions.
Yeah. I mean, you just print it off and use it every time you write your copy, and just go through it. And I mean, this is like, imagine having like Paris Lampropoulos or Clayton Makepeace scrutinize every word of your copy, just like I was telling you how we've always did our copy, right? Well, I basically taken those things and applied that and put that into these checklists,
Excellent. So sign up, you get that right away. Plus you get the what's in Kim's mailbox, breakdown emails, and the other Copy Insiders.
And then, and I definitely, you get my promotional emails from time to time about my courses and other things, but smart copywriters will read those and study them.
Yeah, I never get the copywriters who complain that they're getting
it's like
promotions.
You're literally in marketing and you're complaining about a marketing.
Yeah. So you also have now I still have your virtual LA bootcamp intensive.
Oh wow.
We're not going to point people towards that.
Huh?
Yeah. we're not going to point people towards that. You have new training.
I do. I just came up with my whole brand new Get Dangerously Good copywriting system, which replaces my copywriting velocity program. Although there's so much good stuff in the copywriting velocity that I added that on as a bonus to this. So like you get that in addition to the whole completely redone, updated, expanded training on everything from, the headline, the, fascinations, the et cetera, closing. I know I'm forgetting some leads, and then of course emails, and then kind of pulling it all together. Lots of examples, even some excerpts from my mentoring where I'm giving feedback on copy, and a lot of good stuff in there.
That's excellent. So that's available. Your Research Beast is available in your $1 Million Control.
Yeah. So Research Beast gives you my own 6-step process that I use and teach my mentees for doing research. And it's, again, anytime that I've shortcutted this, it's like, it's just not as strong of a promo. But when you go through all these steps, it's like, it takes you from not having anything to having a copy platform and outline with, 4 or 5 possible big ideas that you can present to your client.
And every A-list copywriter that I've ever met takes research as seriously as Kim is talking about. Yeah.
And then my $1 Million Control Breakdown course is one that I actually put together during COVID. I had a small group of people who went through it, and now you can get all the recordings. But I took 6 of my most successful, longest running controls and just completely broke them down, like from here's how I did my research. Here's how I came up with the idea. Here's, how I studied what I was going up against. Here's what, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like the recordings, it's like, 47 or 57 different promo PDFs and split tests. There's written summaries of every breakdown. There's even as a bonus, I have in that my personal finance broke down where I beat Jim Rutz. And I go through that whole, the 3 years I had that with all the different split tests. So there's a whole lot of good stuff in there. There's even a royalty negotiation cheat sheet. And there's even supplement compliance training in that too.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. So you can, so the deal is, because you're listening to Roy, and Roy is my good friend, and we have a history, we've shared meals together, and I miss hanging out with you in person. You can get $200 off each of those. When you go to my website and you go, you can put in Roy 200.
Yes.
Save $200 off each or every one of those, however many you want. And they all have payment plans too that the discount applies to.
That's excellent and generous. Thank you, Kim.
Sure.
So I'll include a link to that. You can either go to kimschwalm.com and click training at the top, or kimschwalm.com/training.
Yes.
And the Roy 200 discount code.
SCHWALM. Yeah. And the Roy ROY 200, not ROI like King.
Hey, it's the same etymology. So
the King fur.
Yes.
I think that's what you need to change your name to now. Apparently, my nephew had a son, and his name is King. I have not.
King.
Yes, his name is King.
Excellent. Yeah, it's that's.
I'm no comment, but anyway.
Well, my name is just secretly King. That's what I believe the whole time.
I like it. It's a little more subtle. And then you can go to CopyMentor.com if typing that German last name is too hard. And you can get on my email list there, and you can get the free checklist, which is the ultimate 5-in-1 checklist.
Perfect. And all that info is in the description with this episode. Kim, thank you very much for being on Breakthrough Marketing Secrets.
Oh, it's so good to be here. I love what you're doing too. I know you share a lot of great stuff, and I'm glad hopefully people got a lot out of this interview.
I hope they did too. Thank you to everyone who has watched or listened all the way through. And I encourage you, check out Kim's stuff. She is excellent. She's bringing all the experience and has so much value to offer. And so check that out. And thank you. I'll see you again in the next episode. Thank you once again for tuning in to this daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Remember, check out the links with this episode for even more value. Now make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and engage in every way you can to keep this show going and growing and delivering daily value to you. I'll catch you soon for your next big breakthrough.